Selectmen, sorry about the delay, but there was some misunderstanding, so I was over at the town hall making sure everybody got here, and then I was replaced by David, so we'll roll. As you well know, a month ago, we, as a planning commission, finalized our verbiage that we are ready to present to the select board. At least we have a working document in front of us that we're comfortable with. And at this point, we are opening it up to the public for possible revisions, comments, questions to what we have in front of us. Does everybody have a copy of that? Would like that? Okay. Is there a need for us to read it from front to back, or if people had time to review it? Okay. Well, seeing most of the head nods going that we're okay, I would like to open it up to the public. Anybody that would like to make comments on what is in front of them?
We have some comments that I with David. Writing, they're a little more extensive than I'll have for the commission, but I'll summarize them here for you. I appreciate the chance to comment and the chances that you provided along the way to comment. As the commission knows, Swan Wind filed its application for certificate of public good. So while the commission has acknowledged that the changes that you're adopting won't technically apply to Swan Wind, the Isles have participated actively in the process and feel it's important to comment also because they're deeply invested in Swan. It's their home. They've worked hard and continue to work hard every day to contribute to its economy, to the tax base. Their families live here, and they're committed, as you all are, to a healthy, prosperous future for Swan. It's part of the reason why towns do a town plan. They see renewable energy as part of that future, that healthy, prosperous future for Swan. And they have invested the better part of their life savings to help bring that to bear. Throughout the planning process, they have asked you to focus on facts rather than fears. And they do appreciate that you've chosen not to incorporate in the draft you're considering some of the more sky is falling claims about potential impacts of wind power and projects like theirs, despite the pressure that you've had from a lot of anti-wind activists, some of whom are not even residents of Swan. Sadly, though, in this draft that you're considering, we see too many instances where fear won out over facts, and this is not a good service to the local community or to the effort to address climate change. The crisis facing our society, and every community should be doing its fair share. We had hoped that you might have given more consideration to the experience of other wind hosting towns like Milton and Lowell. To listen to some of the opponents of renewable energy, you'd think that the projects that have been built there have left those towns devastated. And the reality is, the day-to-day reality of life in those towns is very far from that bleak scenario. Earlier in the process, we shared comments of the 7 Days article featuring Milton as an up-and-coming town with a very healthy real estate market. That's the town where most of Georgia Mountain Community Wind is located. And residents there have gotten so used to the project and its harmless presence that nowhere in those 4 articles did you see any mention of the wind project, although there was a nice picture in the overhead of the community that went along with the articles. Another town is Lowell, which hosts Kingdom Community Wind Facility, a wind project that is 3 times the size of Swanton Wind. And even with this larger size project located on more sensitive, higher elevation land than what's proposed for Swanton Wind, the experience there, again, continues to be positive. And in fact, Richard Pion, who's the chair of the Lowell Select Board, he can see wind turbines from his home. And this summer, he published a letter in the Rutland Herald that I think really should be considered by you, particularly in light of the fact that in your last deliberative session, you eliminated non-residential scale wind and solar from potentially viable sources of renewable power in Swanton. He says a lot of relevant things, but I'll read just some of them. He says, of all the terrible things opponents threatened would happen, none materialized. None. Property values have not been hurt, wildlife is thriving, tourism has increased thanks to the regular summer public tours, and the claims about sound mirror the false claims made by anti-wind activists. The project was well built and maintained to protect the local environment. Ongoing inspections of the water demonstrate that the mountain is healthy and the stormwater features are working. His letter goes on to discuss the tax benefits that hosting the wind project have brought to the town. And Swanton Wind looks forward to bringing similar tax benefits to your town here, approximately $150,000 in annual payments to the town, as well as what economists estimate to be close to $4 million in wages to the state of Vermont as a result of the project's construction, most of which will be paid to workers here in Franklin County. And that doesn't even count the tax revenues annually that will go to the state. Mr. Pion's letter about Lowell's positive experience concludes with a plea that we would hope you as leaders of Swanton would take seriously. He states it is time to stop trying to create angst and fear where there is no basis for it. Sadly, the fears that have been promoted as part of the discussion around this planning process are too numerous to respond to in one single letter, so we'll just take the opportunity to highlight a few key points. The fact is that wind energy generation and healthy wildlife populations and habitat can and do coexist peacefully. Just as importantly, wind energy is part of the solution to climate change, which is the greatest threat facing wildlife in Vermont and around the world. And it's for those reasons that some of the most prominent wildlife conservation organizations in the world, the National Wildlife Federation, the World Wildlife Federation, and the Audubon Society, have all come out in favor of wind projects. We know that there have been concerns, and it's reflected in your draft, about the deer wintering area in Swanton. That wintering area that occurs on the Belial's property, that their environmental experts mapped and brought to the attention of the state, which had not previously known about it. First, it's important to underscore that Swanton Wind is an example of a project designed to avoid all direct impacts to the deer yard. It will only involve placement of project components in a portion of the 300-foot buffer around the deer yard. That's the typical buffer recommended by the department. And we are working productively with the department on a plan to mitigate the project's potential minor and indirect impacts to the deer yard based on the work on the buffer. The mitigation plan will result in the creation of additional winter food resources for the deer, as well as other improvements in the way that their land is conserved and managed for healthy deer populations. The fact is that deer populations can thrive in the vicinity of wind power projects, and Commissioner Lavoie's own experience hunting deer near the wind projects in New York stands as an example of that. Other concerns in the draft that you have and the deliberations that precede this draft are about bird populations, with the draft emphasizing the fact that Swanton lies in a major flyway for migrating birds. Here again, this concern is overstated when it comes to wind projects like Swanton Wind. The project had bird and bat surveys done as part of the project's assessment, and we've encouraged you to read those reports to get the facts. But the reality from scientific studies is that wind projects in the United States of America are responsible for 0.1% of bird fatalities from human-caused reasons. Meanwhile, cats accounted for between 1.4 and 3.7 billion bird deaths. So given the emphasis that you all have placed on protecting birds during this process, we expect that the Commission will include standards in the Swanton Town Plan that will guide Swanton's regulation or prohibition of outdoor cats in the future. The Commission have also expressed concerns for migrating geese. While we are confident that projects like Swanton Wind will not pose a threat to geese, it's also important to recognize that Vermont is experiencing a major geese overpopulation problem, to the extent that the bag limits for Canada geese are 8 per hunter per day in the Champlain hunting zone, and for snow geese, between 15 and 25 geese per hunter per day. During your recent deliberations, some have expressed fear that renewable energy is driving up Vermont's electric rates. Even though this is an area that goes well beyond the expertise and jurisdiction of the Commission, it is clear from the minutes of previous meetings that such fear drove the debate over removing non-residential scale wind and solar power from the list of potential renewable energy sources in Swanton. The fact is that Vermont enjoys the second lowest rates in New England for residential, commercial, and industrial customers, according to the latest information from the Department of Energy. And Vermont's rates are lower than those in neighboring New York. These low rates have held steady even as Vermont increases its use of renewable energy. The Commission's draft plan also spends a lot of time emphasizing the scenic resources of the town, and we appreciate the scenic beauty of those rolling hills too. Those are the same hills that the Belisles look out from their property and from their home, and they look forward to a time when spinning white wind turbines enhance the beauty of those hills by reminding us of how we are harvesting the wind to produce stably priced, carbon-free electricity to address the climate crisis and increase our energy security as a state. Fears about Swanton Wind's effect on those scenic resources have also been overblown, and the same is true for other renewable energy, types of renewable energy. We agree with Commissioner Daniels' honest assessment of the way in which the wind turbines on Georgia Mountain have integrated with the visual landscape of our region. When he said there are days, sometimes, when he drives down the highway and he doesn't even notice them. Or when he said, some days it's really interesting to watch them turn. In conclusion, by proposing to ban certain types of renewable energy altogether and imposing impossibly high standards on other types of renewable energy that go far beyond those imposed on other land uses governed by your plan, the Commission is setting a dangerous precedent. The examples cited above and those discussed with this Commission before show the extent to which a minority who is opposed to renewable energy can hijack the power of local government to spread fear and misinformation in a way that limits the rights of private property owners. We make this statement with full awareness of the results of the non-binding vote on Swanton Wind, recognizing that of the town's 3,848 registered voters, only 18% of the town's voters actually voted to oppose the project. The vast majority of the town voters chose a reasonable course of expressing no opinion whatsoever. Very reasonable considering that the vote was held at a time before all the facts were in. Ultimately, the Belisles' concern about the changes to the town plan the Commission proposes have less to do with Swanton Wind and more to do with how private property owners and those seeking to do business in the town can expect to be treated going forward. Today, Swanton's local government is unfairly targeting private property owners who want to contribute to the community, to Vermont's clean energy economy, and to the global effort to reduce climate change. If the process that got the commission to the draft you're considering today is any indication, the town of Swanton has started down a very slippery slope. Thank you for your volunteer service and for your consideration of our views. I will leave a copy of this for the town. Your clerk.
Thank you. Well written. Like always, your views, well written, well explained. I'll just make a comment that I don't agree with all of your views, and I don't want to pick it apart because I think it was well presented. But there were certainly things that over the testimony I've received personally over the past year, would totally disagree with some of your comments. Again, it's here for public review. We have taken testimony back and forth. Certainly, I don't think Swanton is opposed to any type of development. We do review it. I reviewed it on the Planning Commission for 20 years. We've had people ask for car dealerships on 105. That didn't happen. We've asked for, different things within the town are zoned in certain districts, and that's where they're allowed. This renewable energy is certainly in front of us. It's new. We've been working on it, just like the Blyles have been working on it to potentially make it a project in town. And we've tried to listen to everybody and make some pretty serious decisions on what will go into our plan. I think as far as the town of Swanton opposing renewable energies, I think the most important thing in the plan is that any renewable energy projects that produce renewable energy credits shall remain in Vermont. And through this whole process, we've heard many resources that could potentially buy this power that are totally not interested. And then we've tried to factor some of those decisions into it also. So I'm not going to say whether I'm for or against the project. I'm just trying to work as a chairman and trying to put something in the town plan that should have been there 3 to 5 years ago, but sometimes things hit a town before we have the opportunity to address them. And I know in the 20 years I've been on the planning commission, if a project comes forward and there's not something in the bylaw or in the plan that says it can't happen, then you're off and running. So we know it's out of our hands. It's in the hands of your project's in the hands of the Public Service Board. Whatever we put in here now, it's after the fact. So we're just trying to as a municipality or as a planning commission put something in there that we can continue to update and change over the next 20 or 30 years. That's where I'm coming from. So, and was it unfair for the town to ask for a vote on your particular project? Could be. It's not something that hasn't happened in the past on a different issue of some sort. 18% to me is a pretty high turnout for a town vote on anything. Unless it's a general election, we'll see how many show up next Tuesday. But, it's unfortunate. We're across the table from one another. I've known the Blyles for years. I think you've done an outstanding job representing them. And we're just trying to work as a municipality and move forward. But that's all I have to say, and certainly let's hear from anybody else that would like to make comment.
Kingdom Wind pays the municipal taxes in Lowell. I don't think that was on the table from Swanton Wind. Bird migration. Bird Diva on VPR was talking about going up on French Hill and watching the hawk migration, raptors, which have the most incidents of contact with wind turbines. So we're not talking Canada geese, we're not talking snow geese, we're talking raptors. The deer yard. The deer go to a deer yard in the winter for shallow snow to escape predators. They're under a lot of stress, and you're going to introduce 105 decibels above the canopy, 93 decibels on the forest floor, and a flashing red light at night. I don't see that as conducive to survival for the deer. And there was a fourth one, but I can't remember it. Sure, the Belisles have the right to do what they want with their land as long as it does not adversely impact their neighbors. And that's all I have to say.
And as far as the bird surveys go that Swanton Wind did, I know that in their 10 days, I believe every single day, they saw hawks and eagles at Turbine Heights on the ridge. So, I don't know, and if they saw them almost every day that they were there, and they weren't there very many days, they're obviously there a lot. I mean, we see them all the time. As far as the cost goes, Green Mountain Power says that the only reason that Lowell project is cost efficient for the ratepayers is because Green Mountain Power sells the RECs out of state to keep the cost down. If they don't sell them the RECs out of state, then the cost to the ratepayers in Vermont is going to be much higher. So, it doesn't do any good to meet Vermont's 90% renewable or 50% renewable, any of those goals, because they sell them out of state and they can't count it here. So, as far as the noise not bothering people and people are living in harmony, go up and talk to Melody McLean in Georgia, go up and talk to Reggie Johnson in Georgia, and they've got a whole different story for you, and they're 3,600 feet from the turbines there. And you can talk to Carolyn Brannigan, who is the rep there. Did she come to one of the meetings? She came to one of the meetings. She said Georgia is not happy with those turbines. They're not living. And sure, the far parts that don't touch it, don't see it, sure, your property values are just fine, but do your property values 2,000 feet from turbines, and I think you're going to find a whole different story. So, and I know you guys have heard all of this before, so, thank you.
Adam?
Just one thought, when we're talking about large-scale industrial anything, I think the Planning Commission needs to consider impact fees for any large-scale industrial building. Anything that's going to be built industrial size, I think we need to consider impact fees for future building.
That was discussed 15 years ago. So
I think we need to start it again.
We'll put that on our next discussion when we meet with the legislative body, for sure.
Appreciate it.
Whatever it may be.
Yep.
Certainly things of great magnitude, like whatever. If it's going to be more police protection, fire protection, whatever.
Yep. And if these things go up 500 feet, someone's stuck in the air, we don't have the equipment. It's not fair to the person that's stuck in the air.
Good point.
Thank you.
Yes.
In all of this myriad of information that we've talked about in the last year and a half, I am just puzzled, but I understand what's going on, that there has been next to no discussion about what an alternative project could be, or an alternative road to take, as opposed to a road that is destructive. And so what I would offer, that there's no way that any of us don't understand that global warming is real. We all get that. There's been so much conversation that people who oppose this project didn't get global warming. We do get it, and we understand. There are other ways of going about this. One of the thoughts that I have had for a long time, and I've just started to to talk about is all of these subsidies, these millions of dollars in subsidies that are being spent in our state alone to encourage these large wind turbine projects. If that destroy, hands down, if that same money was used and invested in Efficiency Vermont, which instead of talking about having more energy going forward and using more energy going forward, the discussion should be as much as anything, and maybe more, that we not use as much energy. And one of the ways that you don't use as much energy would be invest that same money into Efficiency Vermont, so that places like Chittenden County, where there are a lot, and even in other urban areas, there are a lot of landlords that own multiple properties, or there are a lot of properties that are rental that aren't insulated properly, that don't have good windows. That's just one little piece. And then another piece that is huge is lower the speed limit to 55 miles an hour. Yes, it is going to interfere in your life as far as how much time it takes you to go from point A to point B. But if you drive 55 miles an hour or in that range, you're going to get remarkably better gas mileage. And if you do that across the state, across the country, across the region, you're going to diminish how much fuel is being used. So I say, and that's just a couple of little examples. So instead of all of this attention and energy and money going into industrial wind projects that basically damage, and there's no question that they do, why not just shift it around and point the money toward what will make a difference?
You bring up good points, and off the record as being a planning commissioner, is my own personal thought on that is, 15 years ago, everybody complained about energy prices, energy costs, and we were so, we needed what was going on in Iraq and Iran to lower our energy costs and whatnot, because we were buying fuel from over there and spending millions to defend that territory and just giving the money away and still paying high prices for fuels. And in the farming industry, I saw it, with biodiesel. So much money was spent out west to generate, to take corn to generate fuel, that it drove our grain prices all the way down once the fuel prices dropped. And now we've got many sources out there of biodiesel plants that aren't even operating because the price of grain is so cheap now, but at the same time, the price of fuel is cheap. So we've balanced our energy sources because we've diversified ourselves as a country. And personally, I think renewables are the main contributor without a doubt to that. But if we overdevelop certain renewables, then we're going to find the same thing there. We're going to have wind turbines sitting idle, not being used. We're going to have solar fields not being used because we don't need the energy. So we brought the balance back to where we're in much better shape, where if the price of fuel goes up, we can use wood pellets or, those sort of things. So, it's unfortunate that, we're sitting here with potentially an industry or a business that could come to town that might benefit Swanton, or might benefit the state, or it might not. And I think what we've tried to do here is try to listen to everybody, put something that should be pretty firm and understanding for the next 5 years before it's reviewed again. Ross, you're awful quiet.
Just taking notes.
That's why you want the gum, okay?
Yeah.
Reg?
Yeah, Jimmy, thanks for recognizing me. Yeah, so I'm the village manager here, and I haven't said a lot about this running the utility, but one of the reasons why, the more I know about the utility, the more I know I don't know about the utility. But I reviewed the plan today. I like the way it reads. I like the way it's trying to make Swanton as a whole more appealing for business, more appealing for the people who are living here. I understand the Belial's position, what they're trying to do with their own properties. But one of the things that I, as a utility manager, there are times that we're curtailed to run our hydro, which we're the low, just about the lowest in the state right now for electricity. We serve all of Swanton, almost all of Highgate, and some of St. Albans. But because of these large-scale renewable energy projects that are out there, we're told to curtail running. So then we have to buy out on the open market at higher prices. So that fluctuates our bottom line for for us, and affects our customers as a whole. I mean, we're a non-for-profit, which means whatever we take in, we can only have a margin so much that we have to put back into our utility for our. 6%. It's 1.25 tier, I believe. So whatever that equates, I think it's, at least I want to say about $500-something a year we have to keep for maintenance and all that other stuff. We're allowed by the Public Service Board. So our investors are our ratepayers. We take a lot of pride. We've been around since 1894. We plan on being around for quite a bit longer, probably longer than I'm the manager here. But yeah, I think it's what we have and within our community, what we're trying to do. It's positive, and I appreciate what you folks have done in this plan. But so yeah, that's just all I had to say.
Thank you. Are there any other comments?
Yeah, I'd just like to respond to some of the things that have been said in terms of birds and raptors. Yes, it's true that the scientists that the Belials hired to study the project and to design it and to make a plan to operate it so that it minimizes any environmental impacts and protects wildlife, they did see raptors. But they've also, and it's in the testimony that we've submitted to the Public Service Board, spent hundreds of hours looking at wind turbines throughout New England and seen in those hundreds of hours no raptor fatalities. So just because birds are there where wind turbines are doesn't mean that they're going to fly into the blades. In terms of the deer, we are working with the Fish and Wildlife Department. And the Fish and Wildlife Department, I think, has done such a good job managing the deer herd that we're overrun with deer in the state right now. So I think you have to rely on experts to say what is and is not acceptable for deer. In terms of renewable energy and subsidies, they're a drop in the bucket compared to natural gas, which is keeping the lights on in Vermont. When you buy off the open market, you are buying natural gas power. You're buying power, in some cases, from oil and from nuclear. And those industries would not exist but for the subsidies. Meanwhile, Swanton Wind's economic model does not even account for the tax credit, which was recently renewed. So the project is economically viable without some of the subsidies that exist at the federal level. You really have to look at the whole picture, and that's one of the things that's been hard about this process for energy, is that we've looked largely at renewable energy, and there are other impacts from the sources of power that we use when we're not using renewable energy. And efficiency is fantastic. In fact, I worked for a conservation organization that was responsible for having Efficiency Vermont created out of the settlement and the sale of Vermont Yankee years ago. Efficiency is great, we need more of it, but we also have to recognize that there are things we're trying to do as a state for climate, to reduce climate change, that increase the load no matter what. That's moving our cars off of the gasoline we talked about. Just going down to 55 isn't enough when we, as Vermonters, have some of the highest vehicle miles traveled of any Americans, never mind global citizens. So just slowing down the car and burning the gas more efficiently isn't going to get it done, particularly for the kind of cars we need here in Vermont to get around in the snow and to do the kind of work that people do in rural economies. People are moving over to electric vehicles. That power's got to come from somewhere. People are moving off of home heating oil. They're moving off of wood because those are polluting and their prices fluctuate, and onto very efficient electric heat pump power. So we've got to remember that, yeah, we can try to shrink the load, and we are shrinking the load, or at least holding it steady with efficiency, but there are other things we're trying to do to deal with climate change and to deal with localized effects of air pollution and energy security, and never mind all the people who live with the fracking that gets the gas that keeps our lights on, or live with the oil drilling or the pipeline spills or whatever it is that's someplace else, or my family that lives in the evacuation zone of Seabrook nuclear power plant, which is one of the oldest and has like no hope of evacuation. Wind turbine manufacturers, there's not going to be devastation if a nuclear plant goes, which we do buy power in the state of Vermont from Seabrook nuclear plant. You better believe that's going to be a bad situation, not just for the people that live near it, but for all of New England. So I appreciate the chance to respond. I know you're not here for an endless debate, but there are a few things that I feel like needed to be responded to make sure that the record is complete. So thank you.
Thank you.
Heat pumps do not work well at cold temperatures. Electric cars do not work well at cold temperatures. And if your population is growing, you don't destroy their houses.
I have a comment about heat pumps. So we have what's known as cold weather heat pumps. And the chairman of my committee, which is Natural Resources and Energy, said, this is all great stuff, and all of you should do it, but don't disconnect your conventional fossil fuel heating system. Because when the temperature goes down far enough, you're going to need to turn it on. That's all I have to say.
Well, I think you bring up a good point, Mariana, and is if we have multiple resources, we'll keep our costs down. And I think this is the toughest thing that is one of the planning commission has had to look at is, you know, how diverse should we be in our community as far as energy sources. I think we need to be as diverse as possible, as long as it fits into the future of Swanton. And we can go on and on and on, we have for a year. And I really appreciate everybody that's been involved. It's been one of the toughest things. It has been the toughest thing that I've been involved with in Swanton planning over the past 20 years. And let's hope we've collected the right testimony and resources to further our plan for the next few years and see what Swanton needs 5 or 10 years from now as far as renewable energy. And living here my entire life, I guess what I will say is I would hate to see us be a community that gets stapled with something for the next 25, 30, 40 years, and maybe 3 to 5 years from now, a whole change in renewable energy comes forth and go ahead and have a better impact on the community of Swanton. So, again, and I think we've discussed this as a planning commission, your project has already been submitted. And we have just tried to, during this whole process, take in what information we could and put it on paper. And personally, I wish you well in your endeavor, whether it goes forward or not, as business people in this community. I wish you utmost success, and let the powers be decide it. But what we put in here, I think it's in the 11th hour, I don't think it'll have huge impact on what you're doing as far as what I've seen in the past. But I think it does at least allow Swanton to have some boundary lines and guidance to then move forward and create some bylaws on renewable energy in the next 12 months. So with that, is there any other discussion in the Swanton Planning Commission?
I just want to, having been on the board for a few years now and finally getting some discussion, from people regarding what we do on a monthly basis has been nice to actually, most nights it's been a back and forth battle from both sides, and we've taken a lot of information in. And some nights I went home and my head wanted to explode because we were just receiving so much information. But it's good because typically it's just 5 of us, David, Yasha, sitting there, talking about the same things. So hopefully, my hope is that this starts a discussion about the future of Swanton and getting more people involved and actually coming to our meetings for reasons other than one specific project or one specific item. We're here to listen. I enjoy listening. That's why I'm always writing notes, and even, long after everything's been put in this piece of paper here, I'm still rethinking everything that we've done and gone through, because this is always changing, it's always evolving, and we're gonna be working on this again in 3, 4, maybe next year, who knows? So, thanks everyone for coming, and we hope to get more input in the future from everyone.
Thank you. So I'll entertain a motion from the planning commission to propose this text to be included in our town plan, be forwarded to our select board for review, but the motion would be to present this as a new addition to the intersection of the Swanton Municipal Plan, and then it'll go in front of the select board if we approve it as a planning commission. So I guess that'll be my motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of presenting this document to the select board for consideration in addition to the town plan, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.